Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, or night. I finally finished this stupid challenge and can move on with my life. Who could that be? Hello? What? You want me to do the challenge with separate ways? No, I can't. It's impossible. You don't even start with the weapon from Resident Evil 2. I guess I could do that, but that's too much work and... Fine, okay, I'll do it. That's right, in today's video, I will try to beat separate ways only using weapons from Resident Evil 2. Without wasting any time, let's get straight into the challenge. Like the last challenge, I will explain the rules here, which to save time are the exact same from the last challenge. Are Resident Evil 2 weapons only, professional difficulty, no glitches, and no bonus cosmetics. Also, to clear something up from the last video, as Leon, I used regular glasses and mistakenly said they were sunglasses. If anyone realized that, I am sorry, please forgive me. The reason I bring this up is I used them in this challenge to stay consistent with the original, but I actually used sunglasses this time. With the rules out of the way, we can now see if separate ways is possible with only using weapons from Resident Evil 2. A quick disclaimer before continuing. I heavily encourage anyone who is watching this video that hasn't watched my first two videos doing this challenge on the main game to do so. It would give better context for this video and also would be greatly appreciated by me. With that, here is the challenge. The game starts in the castle with Luis about to get executed before Ada saves him. After she does, we start playing and see we have nothing we can use to kill enemies. Bruh. When starting a new run on separate ways, opposed to Leon starting with the handgun, knife, and one first aid spray, Ada starts with the handgun, TMP, knife, grenade, flashbang, ammo, and one first aid spray. And again, opposed to Leon being able to use his knife, we are not allowed to use anything here except the flashbang, which is fine. We can just run past enemies, and the first enemy is a required boss. So separate ways is impossible. Goodbye. Okay, so obviously separate ways isn't possible to beat on New Game. But what about if we start on New Game Plus? Before explaining how we get past this first boss, let me explain the weapons we are allowed to use. The weapons we are allowed to use in this playthrough are the sawed-off W870 shotgun, flashbangs, and heavy grenades. Yes, we can't even use a knife. It also doesn't help that on New Game, we don't get access to the shotgun until Chapter 2 with the Merchant. So I will say here, it is impossible to beat separate ways only using weapons from Resident Evil 2 on New Game. However, on New Game Plus, it's a different story. Unlike New Game, when loading into a New Game Plus run, the Merchant spawns just before the first fight. So all we would have to do is buy the W870 and start from here, which is exactly what I did. This would not only allow me to have a weapon to kill enemies, but that I could also get past the first boss. Now, in the run I attempted this challenge, I had the W870 shotgun upgraded in a previous run. So when I sold it and other supplies, I had a lot of money. It didn't matter because I had nothing to spend that money on, but it's a cool fact you could tell people. I will explain how I will spend the money on upgrades, as obviously I could just fully upgrade it here and now, but to keep it fair, I didn't. With all that explanation, there's only one thing we need to talk about. When do I start using flashbangs and heavy grenades? For flashbangs, when starting separate ways on New Game, you start with one flashbang, so I'll be allowing use of them from Chapter 1 onward. With heavy grenades, I'll start using them once I get one that spawns naturally. So with all that out of the way, we can actually start the challenge and see if separate ways is possible to beat with weapons only from Resident Evil 2 on New Game Plus. After experiencing deja vu, I go to the Merchant and I sell everything except one flashbang, one shotgun bullet, healing items, and resources for ammo and grenades. With the money, I buy full storage, charms, and the W870. After buying them, I go to the typewriter and equip the Q Bear, Striker, and Don Esteban charms. Now this may be considered cheating, but I could have done this during the last challenge. but didn't because Leon had much more firepower compared to Ada. Plus, I'm doing these challenges for fun. I don't really care. I also saved before continuing on. Now that we can actually do damage, I use all 4 shotgun bullets on the black room before checking the whole room for supplies. If I get lucky, I'll have just enough to craft shotgun ammo, which should be just enough to defeat the first boss. Now, this also could be considered cheating, but I did go back on another run and found it was possible to beat without crafting shotgun ammo. You just need to get lucky with RNG. In fact, in the test run, I had 2 extra shotgun bullets, as opposed to my actual run with none. After gathering everything I can in this part of the castle, I'll leave onto this section. Since we haven't made any real progress in the run, I just ran through this part without much care. If I died, I would only lose about 10 minutes of progress, so it was nothing to rage over. After getting an extra flashbang, it's just a small section where I use this one bullet to explode this barrel, escape the castle, and end Chapter 1. Opposed to how you usually start this chapter by stealthing around, I just have to run through it. You'll notice that a common theme with this challenge is just running. After making it down, I run to this part but end up getting grabbed by this villager and dying to the pig root. Thankfully, I saved just before this and retried this part successfully. After talking to Wesker, I move to the cabin, have a moment of PTSD, and leave using 1 bullet on this barrel. On test runs, usually both villagers die from this explosion, but for some reason, this one survived. I don't know how. Running to this little part, I get the supplies from these 2 barrels before dodging attacks from these villagers and pig brutes. Running past this bridge, 3 villagers spawn ahead, but it doesn't matter as we can just run past them. Ada sees Leon cheating by using a weapon not from Resident Evil 2, but lets it slide because it's Leon. Moving to the side of this mountain, I ran past these 2 villagers, solved this puzzle, and reached the church where I'm supposed to meet Luis. While waiting for him, we ring the bingo bell, blue ball Leon's blind, and continued to wait for Luis. After Luis never shows up, we contact Wesker and learn he lost Luis's signal, so now we have to find him. Before that, I gather supplies at the church and reach the merchant. Now that we're here, I can explain how I will upgrade the W870. Like I said before, I could have just upgraded the shotgun fully and called it a day, but in order to keep it fair, I used this upgrade system. Each chapter, I would upgrade the shotgun 1 level. So in Chapter 1, I wouldn't upgrade it at all. In Chapter 2, I would upgrade the level 2. In Chapter 3, level 3, so on and so forth. Hence there are only 5 upgrade slots. In Chapter 6, I will get the exclusive upgrade there. With that short explanation, I upgrade the shotgun, sell and buy supplies, and move on to the second boss fight, which is pretty much the same fight as the first one, just that I have more ammo and a slightly better shotgun. After beating the Black Rub again, I search the entire village for supplies before going to Mendez's cabin. Shortly after getting there, Leon is encountering the Big Cheese again before Ada intervenes and ends Chapter 2. Chapter 3 starts in Mendez's cabin, looking for clues where Luis might be. Entering through a window, I gather supplies before randomly stumbling upon a key. Now, I don't know if I just missed a key detail somewhere that led Ada to find this key, but whatever. This is a game after all. Using this key on this drawer, we find Luis is in the old factory. Before we leave, however, we are attacked by the Big Cheese. We run away from him along with villagers before reaching the factory. We run into the merchant, in which I upgrade the shotgun, sell and buy supplies, and save before entering the factory. Entering the factory, we find the Big Cheese's footprint, which we follow. After unsuccessfully dodging this grab, we enter the basement of the factory where we find where Leon and Luis were being held captive. Following Luis's footprints now, we find where he had a radio frequency and contact him. After contacting Luis, we are ambushed by villagers. This part may seem difficult, but it's actually quite easy. We first run past these 2 villagers and into this room. Running into here spawns Dr. Salvador, but he isn't that big of a threat. The much bigger threat is the other chainsaw enemy, one of the chainsaw sisters, which I just learned are also called the Bella sisters. The more you know. The only reason she is a bigger threat here is because we just have 1 flashbang to stun her. This gives us just enough time to turn this valve before Dr. Salvador or the Bella sister can kill us. After escaping, Ada becomes unconscious due to the parasite she got infected with in the first boss fight, and later wakes up in Mendez's cabin, saved by Wesker. After Wesker leaves, she contacts Luis again and starts one huge sprint to the cabin. Nothing important happened between this point and reaching the cabin, only that Plaga enemies were introduced and I gathered supplies up to this point. The only key part is I ran into this room to gather extra supplies but ended up taking damage. After that short hiccup, I continued to the cabin. Before having a panic attack from the cabin fight, El Gigante shows up, and I'd rather fight him than do the cabin fight. Like the main game, this fight was really easy, just very tedious having to wait for El Gigante to get close to do maximum damage, since we only have a shotgun. After beating El Gigante, Ada meets up with Luis, we both go back to the castle, and end Chapter 3. Chapter 4 begins with this small section in the castle with Luis. There's not much to talk about here other than the fact that I learned you can just run past these enemies and don't have to fight them. After we find Luis's lab was burned down, we have to go look for ingredients for a suppressant for the parasite, which starts by looking for red ink. Before doing so, I go to the merchant and again, upgrade the shotgun, sell and buy supplies, and continue. Before we can though, we have to do this small puzzle and avoid these zealots, which is pretty easy, so we move on. While in this room, we have to shoot these shields in a certain order to open the drawer holding the red ink. This means we unfortunately have to waste 3 shotgun shots here to shoot these shields. There was no way I could have saved shotgun ammo here. I have to use 3 to move on. After that unfortunate situation, we get the red ink, meet Leon, and leave on to get the gold bottle. Yet again, we have to use 8 shotgun bullets here to shoot the gongs. I'm not really sure what these are actually. Like the previous part, there is no way to save ammo here. Either we shoot or die. The next part is honestly one of the worst parts of this whole castle section, which is the part with the knights. Knight enemies themselves are not that bad to deal with. They're honestly quite easier to deal with than normal enemies. It's the fact that I have to use shotgun ammo to kill them. In total, I used about 10 shotgun bullets to kill them, which isn't too bad, but it sucks that I have to use that much on a single part. What also makes this part worse is that these enemies that spawn behind these bars. They weren't that much trouble here, but on practice runs, they were. Moving on to get the final ingredient, the blue butterfly, 2 great things happen. First, I kinda lied about the parts with the knights, as when knight enemies die, they actually drop spinels. Now, if we get lucky with their drop spawns, we should get about 5 spinels. We can then use these spinels to get 20 gunpowder. This is very useful for crafting, especially since shotgun bullets takes 11 gunpowder. Secondly, we meet the MVP of the last challenge, the Pond of Heaven. Unlike last challenge, I don't have a knife to kill the fish, but I can just wait for them to line up and use 1 bullet to kill 2 fish, which luckily happened here. Moving to the dog maze, all we have to do is kill this red zealot to get this blue moonstone in order to move on. This part is very easy. I did take some damage and used a lot of ammo, but overall it wasn't too bad. Using the blue moonstone, we move to the castle side where we contact Wesker, inform Leon where Ashley is being taken, and find the last ingredient, the blue butterfly. After we obtain it, we find Luis, give him the ingredients, take the suppressant, and move on to Chapter 5. Chapter 5 starts with this small section in the castle. Nothing important happened here, so we'll move to this part, this sewer section. I'm not really sure what to call it. There are a lot of enemies here, but since I only have a shotgun, I have to run past them. Even if I just had a knife, I would be able to do something, but since I don't, I have to just run. After turning this crank to get rid of the water, which, also, how did Luis get through this part holding his breath for that long? I meet the merchant and again, upgrade the shotgun, and buy and sell supplies. At this point, the W870 is fully upgraded without the exclusive upgrade. Moving on, we get to the double Gyarados room. This room was pretty easy to get through. I found that killing them as fast as possible before the room got filled with zealots made this part very easy to get past. However, during my first attempt at this room, I did kill both Gyarados, but a Zealot grabbed me, and with no knife, I got my neck snapped. Retrying, I killed the Gyarados much faster and escaped. With the shotgun fully upgraded, the challenge became a bit easier. It was still difficult due to only having one gun, but it was bearable. After this room, we have the U3 boss fight. But unlike the Verdugo boss fight in Leon's story, I was able to beat Lu3 and its second phase very easily. Also, after defeating its first phase, I got my first heavy grenade, so if you see me use them, that's why. Moving on, Luis contacts us that Krauser stole the Ember, he dies, and we get to the clock tower. Similar to Verdugo, when playing as Leon, I was able to get past the clock tower part very easily. However, as Ada, this part took me about 25 minutes to do. I don't know why, but I just kept dying and dying and dying and dying. I remember genuinely considering cheating this part because I couldn't do it, but eventually I prevailed and got past it. With that, we get to the boat, meet Leon again, and move on to Chapter 6. Chapter 6 starts the exact same way as Chapter 13, it did in the main game. Leon and Ada both reaching the island. However, Ada starts at the camp before the Krauser fight in Leon's story. During this part, we usually stealth your way past these enemies, but since we don't have a knife, we can't. So I do what has been working for me this entire challenge, run. Making it past these soldiers, I make it to the merchant, get the final upgrade on the W870, buy and sell supplies. After this point, this chapter can be broken down into 5 main parts. The Wrecking Ball Arena, Facility, Carnival Ride, Stronghold, and finally, the Lab. These parts can also be ranked from easiest to hardest, which I'll do, just for fun. The first, the Wrecking Ball Arena. It's a pretty short section, I did struggle with it a little though. Again, it's so short that it's not that hard, so in the ranking, it will go third. Next, we have the Facility, which is the second hardest, but not in terms of difficulty really. During this part, it was pretty easy to maneuver around the enemies present, but what made it harder was the regenerators. These enemies are pretty much nearly impossible to kill with the loadout I have, so there was no point in thinking of me trying to kill them. It also made it harder that there's an Iron Maiden that spawns, and the scary thing about them is if they grab you, if you don't have a knife, it's an insta-kill. This almost happened here, but thankfully I was able to grapple out of there in time. So again, this part wasn't really that hard, it was just the presence of Regenerator and the Iron Maiden that made this part be ranked higher. Next, the Carnival Ride is ranked 4th. This part is just me running around this little cable car dodging fire arrows and rockets. It's not that hard, but there is one that is easier than this part, so it's ranked 4th. With 2nd, 3rd, and 4th ranked, what were the hardest and easiest parts of Chapter 6? The Stronghold or the Lab? Before you even ask, it was a Stronghold that was the hardest. This part is just extra for no reason. And with my limited kit, it made it so much worse. I was able to get past it during my second try, but it's so much for one singular part. I hate it. So with the process of elimination, that leaves the Lab at 5th. The Lab is just running and pressing E. I have basically been doing that for this entire challenge in about 990 hours. So this part was pretty straightforward. After we escape, we get on the jet ski to save Leon and Ashley and move on to the final chapter. Chapter 7 holds 2 main parts, the Lord Saddler boss fight and this mini section which the Mercenaries game mode calls the Docks. In order to get to the boss fight, we have to go on our second to last long run, which was pretty easy. Now, to stay consistent with the last video, I would do an edit, if you even called it one. But the fight was just very boring. It was just me running around these square pillars and shooting Shadler every chance I got. It did take a couple of tries, but it was very easy, and in my opinion, not worthy of an edit. Again, if you even Colton did it. With that, we defeat Tyler, get knocked unconscious, and move on to the final part of this challenge, the docks. This part on previous playthroughs is super easy. I could do it with my eyes closed. However, this was not the case for this challenge run. For the life of me, I could not do it. I would die again and again and again, and I have no idea why. I played this part the exact same I would on previous runs, and I just could not do it. Eventually, I got a run past getting the rocket launcher Leon uses to kill Sadler, but ended up dying again.
Oh crap!
Trying it again, I made it past getting the rocket launcher, took my time not to get killed by these rocket launcher enemies, and got to the elevator. All I needed to do was press this button and I was home free. There was no other possibility to die other than letting time run out, which I had loads of. However, as I pressed the button, another rocket launcher enemy shot a rocket, and it killed me. Now let me say, when I play video games, I am very casual, and I hardly ever get mad and start raging.
What is this hot dog?
Oh my, what am I doing? I meant to activate my super, bro.
No, bro. Honestly,
don't call that, bro.
It's very rare for me to get annoyed at playing a game. This was one of the few instances where I got so mad. I was literally an elevator right away from completing this challenge. This huge setback didn't affect me too much, as I now knew I can get to this point, but I was just so mad and just wanted this challenge to end. Doing one more failed attempt, I just wanted this challenge to end. But thankfully, I got one good run. Before anyone asks, this was edited by a good friend of mine. He is a way better editor than me and does dumb stuff like this.
In this game. Alright, let's get out of here.
Anyway, after Ada recovers the amber, she goes her separate way from Leon, and we finally finish this challenge. So, it is in fact possible to beat separate ways only using weapons from Resident Evil 2 on New Game Plus. Again, this is completely impossible on New Game unless you use glitches to skip the first boss. Despite my very distasteful subscription of certain parts, I had a lot of fun doing this challenge. It was the first time I had played this game in a way that I basically couldn't kill any enemies except bosses, so it was a very unique playthrough. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I liked making it. I have one more idea with Resident Evil 4 with this challenge that I think will be pretty cool, so if you're interested, please stick around to find out. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whenever you are watching this. Goodbye.